What happens when your child tells you they are transgender? How many parents truly understand what it means to be transgender? And how do we move past the thinking or idea of, oh, it's just a phase, or worse yet, it's a disgrace? We're talking about all this and more on Raw with Rasha. My guest today is Rayman Mathoda, originally from Delhi, India. She is a mother of 4 children. In fact, she has 2 sets of twins. Rayman, you must have a very busy household.
You're so right, Rasha. I think busy would be a good word to describe our house.
Perhaps an understatement.
Indeed.
Well, recently, your 11-year-old daughter came out and told you she was trans. And I'd love to talk to you more about what was that moment like for you?
You know, it's really interesting. You're right. This coronavirus quarantine period and the onset of puberty, frankly, really brought this issue to a head in our household. And our daughter told us in the last year that she wanted to switch pronouns and change names, and that she is transgender and wants to go by the he, they pronouns.
So did you kind of know in your heart sooner?
I don't know that I could say that. I felt moments of something's different here in a way that doesn't feel normal, but I did not expect my child to be transgender. You know, it was things like our daughter once came as a young child and said, I want a penis. But, you know, you sort of think, she's got a male twin. It's very normal to want something that the other kid has, especially if you happen to be in a household of 6 people where 5 are female. And we sort of said, oh, you know, it's just that. Or by the pool, she would always want to take her shirt off and be like the guys and wear bottom swimsuits only. So it was, or a few years later, around 4, 5, 6, she wanted boy underwear. So she wanted us to buy her boy underwear. So it was things like that. But I can't say that I'd taken the leap to realizing that my child is truly transgender until recently.
Well, and Rayman, let's talk about the term transgender. For myself and our audience, what does transgender mean? There's a lot of misconceptions around this word.
I think it's a phenomenal question. And the truth is that gender variant people actually fall into many subcategories. The simple way that I think about a transgender person is simply somebody for whom their felt gender, the way they feel on the inside, is different than their body. And so that mismatch is the way that I think of somebody who's transgender.
How did her siblings react to that, especially the other twin?
The moment that that conversation occurred with her twin was a very difficult one. He started crying. He was very, very upset. And we had a very long night conversation where the children talked about what was going on, and her twin was extremely upset. He was upset at losing his sister. He was really afraid for her and worried about her. And actually the conversation ended with them both saying that they both loved each other as they were, and with her telling him, you can call me her. You can call me Gia, don't change. And with him waking up the next morning and saying, I support you as you are. But actually, he didn't start calling her the he pronouns back then. And it was only several months later, actually, the way that the change occurred in our household was because this issue had been coming up over and over again. About 6 or 7 months ago, we noticed he had switched to he pronouns. And then their younger sisters has switched to he pronouns. And it was sort of the parents that woke up and said, oh, that moment has come.
What a magical moment.
Yeah, it was really the kids.
And Gia is now Neil.
Gia is Neil.
So now you and your wife have had your own trials and triumphs as well. And just in looking at that and seeing Neil sharing his experience with you, how have you decided to handle things, just knowing the difficult situations you've gone through? Because I'm sure you want things to be easier for him.
You know, you're right, Rasha. It's really interesting. On the one hand, you know, being LGBTQ myself makes me in some ways well-educated and well-positioned to deal with the issue, because this is not the first time I'm meeting a transgender person. In fact, I've served on nonprofit boards for LGBTQ organizations with transgender people. So I've been exposed to them for a very long time. But I have to admit that the challenge that we go through as LGBT people, especially in our Desi South Asian communities, definitely made me more hesitant and more worried for him, because in some ways, the last thing I wanted for him was to deal with the same set of issues that I've dealt with. There's a lot of loss, there's a lot of rejection, there's a lot of pain. And, every parent wants to protect their child from that. But that's not more important than the child being happy with what they are. And so when it became very clear what Neil is and who he is and how he wants to be, it was very clear that I needed to step up and that we needed to step up. And we have, and we will, always.
So has Neil gone back to India at all yet?
Neil went back to India in 2018 for his great-grandmother's 90th birthday, but he has not gone since this social transition occurred.
Have you thought about how you might approach a situation when you go to India? Because as we all know, we have very tight-knit families, but there is a stigma in the country, in the community, and in the culture. And knowing that what you've been through, and let's just address the lo kya kahenge syndrome. The what are people going to say syndrome is the biggest thing in the community. Have you thought about how you might approach this?
Yes, it is a big topic, and I cannot say that I have all the answers. The first step for us really is, well, first of all, we don't want to speed the process of him coming out. After all, he's only 11, faster than is comfortable or appropriate with him, because frankly, we want to give him the space to figure himself out and who he really is and how he wants to display himself and who he wants to tell and not. With that being said, speaking to the families has become fairly important, and we've initiated the process of speaking to the grandparents. And I'm delighted to report that at least one set of grandparents, and even one level beyond the grandparents, remember that great-grandma I mentioned up in the Himalayas who's now 93? Well, I'm delighted to report that one side of the family is very accepting and has told him that they want him to be whoever he is and that they support him no matter who he wants to be. And they're actually really happy that he's figured it out when he's on the younger side of things. So I honestly think the most important thing is the people closest to you supporting you. And I think from there, I get less worried, because he's always going to be with us or them when he meets other people. And we can frame that conversation and that meeting in the appropriate way in India.
Raw with Rasha will be back in a moment. Dealing with the people who are not supporting? Because I can imagine, especially if they're grandparents or close loved ones, that might be challenging for you.
That's very challenging, to be honest, and a big topic for us and me right now. But the reality, honestly, is when you put the needs, the emotional needs and the health, mental health of an 11-year-old against the needs or desires or opinions or beliefs of a 70-something-year-old, the decision is very clear. So, for me, I have to protect Neil and make sure that he feels supported and that he does not feel anyone with huge credibility in his family really creating a problem and more dysphoria for him, because he has enough to deal with. So honestly, I don't feel comfortable exposing him for any length of time to those that are not supportive of him. And we're going to have to navigate that one person at a time, one household at a time. I don't think I have all the answers on that one.
And looking forward, Rayman, what are you excited about on this journey with Neil? What do you look forward to?
I really look forward to my child being the most he can be, being everything he wants to be, and knowing that he has our support no matter what. Just the change in him, I can't emphasize how stark the change is. About a year ago, he started to grow boobs. He started to enter puberty. And the child that we'd known as being gregarious and confident and creative and who loves to dance and sing and perform was nowhere to be seen. He was quiet. He looked down and depressed. He was in his bed. And we really didn't know what was going on.
Was it hard for you to see and watch, because just to see that transition of your child?
It was very hard. And you don't know what it is that's causing that, you know, so you don't really understand what you're going through. And is it just teenagerness? Is this puberty? But the reality is, seeing how it's crazy. Just the other day, he was talking to his nanny. And when she told him, Neil, I'm with you no matter what, the smile on his face, that's what gives me joy. The confidence. I see him writing poetry and songs now. I see him starting to perform now. Literally with the love of your closest people, he is transformed. And that's the joy, and seeing him on the journey, and all of my children on this journey. I mean, 4 children are...
Yes, I don't know how you do it, Rayman. I don't know how you do it.
I can tell you it's crazy, but it's also crazy good. You know, the joy is multiplied as well as everything else.
In looking at this journey with Neil, what has been the most difficult moment for you?
Honestly, it has been telling the grandparents. It's been the worry about the broader family community, friends and family. Log kya kahenge?
Well, because we're so tight-knit, right?
Yes, yes. And although we do have exposure in India to transgender people, in recent years, there has been a Supreme Court judgment and now even a law that creates a third gender, which, by the way, has good and also bad with it. The truth is, most Indians are not comfortable with transgender people and don't fully accept transgender people into their inner core. Even when they are accepted and acknowledged as a member of society, they are put into an other category. Hamare saath nahi, hamare ghar ke bahar. And so that is the challenge that we must now navigate, both as a family and candidly as a nation and a diaspora.
How do we move past that? I mean, have you ever thought about that? Or what can we do to kind of eliminate that barrier?
Honestly, things like this. My decision to come and speak with you today is part of my realization that those of us in the LGBT community that have the ability and the courage to speak up, and the circumstances, which, by the way, are never perfect, because there's always somebody in your life who wants to be closeted and who's themselves closeted, who deserves consideration. And so this is a complex issue, but I think, honestly, more of us have to come out. We have to talk to each other. We have to talk to each other on media, public media, social media, private media, dining rooms, weddings, marriages. We have to come out and talk about this as families and friends and as a community. And I hope we are embarking on that journey in a bigger way now.
Absolutely. Can we talk a little bit about the puberty and what Neil is going to be experiencing? Have you guys had a conversation, or what's your approach on that?
Puberty has been a big topic in our house for the last 1 or so year, since Neil started the process and started to see some breast development. And puberty is actually a huge event in the lives of most transgender people, because a lot of and I should actually say all transgender folks, I think, experience strong body dysphoria, a discomfort with their body. And what tends to happen is, because their felt gender, their gender identity is different than their gender that was assigned at birth and their gender in their bodies, that sense of something not being right gets very exacerbated and gets worse and worse as puberty goes by. And so we actually saw the problems in our family and the dysphoria and the sadness and the despair of our now son increase dramatically over the puberty. And frankly, that gave us it brought a lot of thoughts to us. On the one hand, we thought, maybe he's not transgender. Maybe this is just, every girl must feel something about, so many girls don't like puberty, don't like growing boobs. Maybe it's that. But as we got into it and spoke to greater parents and spoke to Neil, we realized the puberty actually is a really important moment to take very considered and thoughtful moves. Since Neil is only 11, making any change with the body to change gender is very far away. Usually you don't do anything to the body until the child is at least 16 or so. These are not, I'm not a doctor, this is not medical advice, but 16 or so. And usually gender reassignment or gender affirmation surgery doesn't happen until after 18. However, the decision that we faced was, should we stop puberty? You know, most of us experience the transgender community through transgender women who were assigned male at birth and who went through puberty. And because they went through puberty, they have enough male characteristics that you're able to tell that this woman was formerly a male.
Right.
If you catch and realize that this is going on with your child before puberty, the whole reality, the lived reality of the child can be very different. If a transgender boy does not go through female puberty, he won't have boobs. There are also other things to consider. If a transgender male does not go through female puberty and does not have a period, which is the case in our family at the moment, they won't be able to have biological children. So there's multiple considerations. It's not a black and white issue at all. There's many considerations for the parents to consider, for the child to consider. And I strongly recommend lots of conversations, not only within the family, but with medical professionals, therapists, and the community to figure out what is right with you, family. But in our case, we did decide to take what is called a puberty blocker. Science has now progressed to a place where there is actually a way to put pause on puberty, not change. He can still decide to go back to female puberty if he decides that he wants to live life in a different way or have the chance to have biological children. But we've basically bought him between 2 and 4 years of a pause on puberty so he can be himself and go through his journey and figure out how he wants to live his life. And we're just going to have to go on that journey with him without predetermining where it goes. So those are some of the big issues that come up. And I can tell you, the moment that puberty blocker went in, it was a pretty small little surgery. He is so excited about this. He wanted that so badly that it's clear that this was the right decision for us. But again, I encourage everybody to go through their own journey, but keep all of these key considerations in mind and realize that if you do catch your child and have that conversation with your child at a younger age, their transition to the gender that they really feel and want to be and are can be much easier because they don't develop the physical characteristics of the other gender that they were born with. Here's one thing I would say to you, since we're in the South Asian community. Sometimes us South Asians act like, "Bacche chote hain, inko kya pata?" You know, like the child is, you know, half of a human, like half of an adult, and they have half of the judgment and knowledge of an adult. The way I like to think about it is that they're just a smaller, fully developed human being. They haven't got the full education, they don't have the full exposure to life, but the truth is they have the innate wisdom. And the children truly do know. At the same time, I would say it's a multi-year journey for everybody. And some children realize when they're young, some people realize before puberty, some people realize over time, and it depends on so many different factors, both related to the child and related to the environment that they're in.
More after this short break. What would you say is the cost to a child who's not able to fully express themselves when the parent comes up and says, "No, you are not what you're trying to be. This is what you are"?
The cost, I would say, is extraordinarily high in terms of their mental health and their happiness. It is a very high cost to have the people that you love the most not accept that which you knew to be true inside of you. The other, a very practical and very important fact that we should all know is fully half of transgender youth either consider suicide or attempt suicide, giving up their life. They have so much discomfort inside themselves that they literally don't want to be here. And that is an issue that we should all be very, very aware of. And I saw the early part of this when Neil wasn't able to speak about who he really was with us and feel accepted. And so It's very, very important. And I would recommend for parents that don't feel like that they have the skills and tools to speak with their child about it. This is where we really do have to go and get some outside support, get some therapists, get somebody who's specialized in working with transgender children to help get your child that mental and emotional support.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I think you need a tribe, right? So there's nothing wrong with seeking
100%.
therapy or counseling, because there's not everything. This is not something that we can figure out at home all by ourselves.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I feel like mental illness has a stigma in our community, in particular in the South Asian diaspora, and it really shouldn't. It's like any other thing that you either fix with medicine or you fix with therapy. I mean, I sometimes think I need therapy. You know, I want to go talk about everything that's going on in my life and get some support. And so I very much encourage, there should be absolutely no stigma. In fact, please, I urge everyone hearing this to destigmatize mental illness, psychiatry, psychology, getting support. We all need support with all of the challenges that we go through in our life. Let's open up and get everybody the support that they need. And that includes you.
What's the best thing a parent could do if their child does come out to them?
Listen to them and to accept them as they are. If you can hold that judgment back and just seek to understand, realize that this is taking a lot of energy and thought and a lot of courage, and even a subtle signal can change the way that person will come out or show themselves or feel. I think the feeling of acceptance and love, it just boils down to love and acceptance, which is very challenging in those moments, but absolutely the most important thing. This conversation is now starting to remind me of Sadhguru. And what I would say to people is, don't live in your fear. A fear is, as Sadhguru would say, you're worried about something that could happen, either the past or the future. You're not living in the moment. And so the greatest wisdom is really follow your heart. Follow your heart and know that you're doing the right thing, and know that ultimately it's really just your journey that matters. It's not what other people think. And other people, by the way, is really interesting too. Every time I've seen a parent actually step up and say, "Ye mera bacha hai, ye meri bachi hai. I will support this child and I'm with this child no matter what." Log fall in line. And the ones that don't fall in line don't matter.
They fall away.
Let them fall away. Indeed, that's exactly right.
And is there a place for resources where families can go to?
Very much so, although only recently, and I would encourage anyone listening who has the resources and desire to do so, to support these resources, because they're desperately needed in our community. I wish and hope there was more education for all of our parents, our masis, our mamus, our tayas, everybody.
It's new.
It's very new. There's a lady that I met by the name of Aruna, who lives in New Jersey, and started an organization called Desi Rainbow, because she experienced this issue and this community in her own family and did not have the resources herself several years ago. And so the wonderful Aruna has created this organization, DesiRainbow.org, for LGBTQ individuals and their parents and allies to educate themselves. And so I encourage people to go there.
And that's DesiRainbow.org again. Rayman, it has been such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for opening up your heart and your journey with us, and even Neil's journey. I can imagine you have got happy moments, sad moments, trying moments, but it's a journey, and we're all here. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate having you here today. And thank all of you for watching Raw with Rasha.